Okay, the next statement we want to take a look at is the statement of shareholders' equity, or we'll just call it the statement of owners' equity. And this is a very important statement in the business. Again, it's a period statement, meaning this statement is prepared once every period. It could be a month, could be a quarter, whatever the accounting periods are for a business. Usually monthly is a good time to prepare this statement, so you can analyze it by month. All right, so it starts out with what we call a beginning balance of retained earnings. All right, and what retained earnings are, it's kind of like mine and your savings account. All right, after we have money left over at the end of every month, hopefully we put it into a savings account, and our savings account balance just keeps accumulating, and we don't withdraw from it. It becomes retained. It's a place where we retain all of the past earnings that we've collected. And a business does the same thing. They keep an account that is kind of an account that lasts forever and starts from inception and carries on as you go. But it's basically a collection of all of the earnings you've made from the beginning of your business and that you've retained in this account. All right, so that'll have a beginning balance at the beginning of the month, and then during the month, certain things happen. You either made net income or you had a net loss, and then it either adds to or subtracts from the retained earnings. All right, so you want to go from the balance of retained earnings, and you want to add net income for the period or less net loss from that. If you had a loss, and some businesses carry a loss for a period, doesn't mean it's every period, but if you did have a loss, you would subtract that from retained earnings. All right, because you would be losing some of those accumulated earnings. You'd have to pay for your loss from these retained earnings. All right, so and then now every business has the opportunity or the option of whether or not they want to pay dividends or not, and they do not have to pay dividends. It's just that in order for investors to like you, they would like to get a little something if you're profiting. But there are some companies that are very stingy with dividends because they like to keep that money and retain that money and reinvest it and put it into research and development. And Apple is a great example of that. Apple shareholders sometimes don't cry when they don't get their dividends because they know that Apple is probably going to reinvest all of their net income into some form of research and development and create the next big iPhone that's going to increase the value of their stock. So they're happy. They're happy, or not necessarily happy, but they don't mind not getting their dividends from Apple. So if they did pay dividends, okay, if so at the end of the period they had a net income, they had profits, then they would less dividends declared. All right, what happens is the board meets with the business management, and they decide how much they're going to pay from their net income, and they declare that dividend to their shareholders, and then they get a little check, sometimes a big check, based on what the the net income was for that period. Okay, so if they do pay dividends, or at least declared dividends during the period, then that would be subtracted from the net income. And after you do those two things, all right, your net income is added to, and you subtract the dividends that you declared or paid, you get a new balance of retained earnings. Okay, and this is a big statement. If you wanted to go see, basically you want to say, did this business win or lose during the period? The income statement obviously is going to tell you that, but this is going to give you a better look at what is the business actually putting into their savings account at the end of the month. Because even if they did make a nice net income, they still have to take care of their shareholders and pay them dividends. So what's happening to that retained earnings account is really what is showcased here on the statement of owner's equity. A great statement to see, um, a summary of whether they won or lost. Again, the income statement is going to show you if they made money or not. But this is going to be, where were we at before? Where are we at now? And this comes out, like I said, at the end of every period. So it'd be very similar to, looking at the Cubs' overall win-loss record from their inception, which is probably pretty bad. But if you took last year, you'd say they had more wins than losses, and so their overall record from inception improved because of last year and hopefully because of this year. So that's basically a good analogy to think of for the statement of owner's equity. It's that, last year after the Cubs season was over, you could look back and say, we had this many wins and losses from the beginning of our team, and now we add to it the collection and the World Series and all that stuff, and now we have a new look at the overall picture of the Cubs. All right, so that's the statement of owner's equity. That's the anatomy of it. Again, if you didn't pay dividends or declare dividends, then that wouldn't go there. If you had a net loss, you would subtract it from the previous balance of retained earnings. And this is what goes on the balance sheet. Okay, the new balance of retained earnings is, like I said, it's kind of that cumulative piece of how we've done through the years, and that's what goes onto the balance sheet, which we'll talk about later.